This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider.
The last big hurdle to Boris Johnson's plan to switch to step 2 of his roadmap to recovery in July has cleared. Britain's coronavirus alert level moved down the traffic light system from 4 to 3. The change came from the new Joint Biosecurity Centre and was endorsed by all 4 chief medical officers for the UK nations. It means the path is cleared for pubs and restaurants to reopen next month, and we might even see the 2-metre rule reduced to 1 metre. Dr Mike Galsworthy is a visiting researcher at the London School for Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and a campaigner who's been critical of the government's response to the pandemic. Mike, why has the government decided to reduce the alert level today?
If you remember, the alert level has 5 levels, meaning that coronavirus was either growing exponentially in the population or at a high level. It's now been reduced to alert level 3, which means that it's in circulation, not at a low level, and so originally the importance of these 5 levels were that there were actions associated with it, with each level. So we were only meant to start reducing lockdown or easing lockdown as we went to alert level 3. But the government decided that it would ease lockdown at the end of May, even though the alert level stayed on 4. And this is because the alert level is set by the chief medical officers of the 4 nations in agreement, whereas what actions we do as a country is set by this government. So in this whole story, you see there the breaking of the scientific and medical advice from the actions that government are actually taking.
So is there a feeling then that this is the right decision?
Probably. I mean, this is the decision of the chief medical officers, and it is the case that the frequency of new cases of coronavirus has been dropping. So I think it's around about 1,200 now, with 130-something deaths on a daily rate. So it is lower in the population than it was before, but it's not actually down yet to low numbers, which then would be alert level 2.
What does this mean for the country now? Will restrictions be eased significantly? Can we go out and meet groups of people in the park and go to the pub?
Well, as I was saying before, originally these alert levels would indicate when there was going to be some change in behaviour by government. But as we saw at the end of May, the government broke that system and decided that they were going to reduce measures or change measures as and when they pleased, regardless of what the chief medical officers were saying about the alert level. So your guess is as good as mine. I think they're just celebrating it because they can celebrate it and they want things to celebrate, particularly after their app disaster. As to what pace they will be easing things at, I mean, that's up to them at the moment. It has become unbound from the science and unbound from the medical advice tightly, and it operates much more loosely. So we'll just have to see what the government say.
And thinking longer term, you're calling for an inquiry. What is it exactly that you want to see happen?
Apart from the fact that you've got all the retrospective stuff of why do we have such high death rates, you've got families who want justice, and you've also got a lot of things that have gone wrong. We also, at this stage in the year, have to think about the second half of the year. We've got a lot of problems coming up which are different from the first half. We need to have this as an open, science and health driven inquiry with cross-party support, so we can get on the front foot, get ahead of the curve for the second half of the year. You've got all the problems of the first wave. You know, you backed up hospital admissions and GP admissions and diagnostics. You've got the problems that coronavirus survivors still carry with them in terms of lung damage or lethargy, as well as your domestic abuse and depression and stress and disruption to life. Plus then, what if there is a second wave? What if there are flare-ups? When Boris Johnson says there's time to learn lessons later. That's not true. You can't wait until the end of the whole year when it's all over to learn lessons. You have to get on the front foot now with some very obvious and specific challenges.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.